A good practice for us will be to separate this delete button into a separate component. Let's go here into our components, into the buttons, and create here the delete button. Let's say delete assistant button .tsx rfce here. Alright, now I'm gonna take this button and I will put here. And here inside this delete button we need to invoke an action, and for form, alright, let's put this button inside the form, and here inside this form we need to put an action. And here inside this form we need to put an action. Let's say here that we will create an delete assistant action. Alright, and to pass to this delete assistant action an argument, let's say the assistant ID. Here we need to create an input of type hidden. The value needs to be the assistant ID, and the name will be assistant ID. Right, here to our button we need to pass the assistant ID that will be a type of string. Alright, and our assistant ID will go to the value. And here we need to import our new created button, delete assistant button, and here we need to pass the assistant ID. Alright, and now coming up here we need to create our assistant action. Let's delete the onClick event and make this button of type submit. Right, now we need to go to our action and actually create our delete assistant action. Alright, here I'm gonna say export const delete assistant action. It's gonna be an async function. Alright, let's come here and import our action. Now we will have the argument of initial state, of type any, and we also will have the form data that is gonna be the type of form data. Here we can see that we have a problem because we give to our function 2 arguments and it expects only one when we pass right here into the action, and we need to create something similar to the previous action, the create assistant action. If we will go here, let's copy this line, go back to our delete assistant, put here the use form state hook. Don't forget to make this component a client component, use client. Here we need to put the delete assistant action and the initial state. Let's define here const initial state, that is gonna be an object with the message of type string. Alright, take our form action, let's say delete action, put here the delete action. Alright, what is the problem here? Because we need to return something from our action. If I'm gonna say here return message assistant deleted successfully, now you can see that we don't have the error. Let's say that here inside our delete assistant action we want to take the assistant ID, a string, and let's log our assistant ID. Now if I want to go back to our app, npm run dev, if I'm gonna click this delete button, here in my application the assistant ID is gonna appear. Now the only thing that we have to do is to delete our assistant using the assistant ID. Let's go back to the documentation on the assistants here, on the deletions. Now we just need to use this code. Let's put here on the delete function the assistant ID. Alright, now let's put all the thing in a try catch block. And here let's log the error and return the message. It is gonna be error on deleting the assistant. Alright. Now let's go back to our application, and if I'm going to click here on Candy Assistant, let's delete it. And now in our console we're gonna see that we successfully deleted our assistant. If I'm gonna refresh the application, you can see that the Candy Assistant doesn't showing up here. The only thing that we need to do is to revalidate this path. And now here, before we are returning the message, here we need to put the revalidate path of delete assistant. And here you're gonna do the same. Now if I'm gonna click on this deletion button, if the deletion is complete, you can see that automatically refresh the page. The only thing that we need to do now is to put on loading state on the deletion button. For that we need to go back to our delete assistant button. Alright, and we need to use the use form status. Alright, and this hook is gonna return on loading or maybe pending, I think. Let's see. And now if it's on a pending state, I want this button to be disabled. Alright, and I want here, if it is a pending, I want to put this deleting state, otherwise I'm gonna show the delete. If I'm going to click here on my assistant, you can see that we didn't get the deletion state because the pending from the useForm status needs to be a separate component. So for that I'm gonna go here and I'm gonna say const deal button. Alright, that is gonna be a function that returns. Alright, here, and now here I'm gonna extract this button. I'm gonna put here in a sub button component, and now with this hook I'm gonna put right to this sub button component. Remember, you don't need to have the same useForm status and useForm state in the same component, because you can see that we didn't get the pending state here. Now if I'm going to put my sub component here, and if I'm going to click here to delete this assistant, here you can see that I have the state, right? Now we finally completed our delete assistant functionality. Going back to our illustration, you can see here that we need to have the edit possibility of the assistant. And for that, I'm gonna do this here in the same page. Next to the delete button, I'm gonna put another button that is gonna be an edit button. Change this title of the page and this title of this button not to be just the delete assistant, and it's gonna be the manage assistant. Let's go here where we have our buttons. Instead of delete assistant, here I'm gonna say manage assistant, manage, here as well manage, here as well manage, on the sidebar update imports, yes, here on the sidebar I want to put the manage assistant, and now here on the pages I want to have the page called manage assistant, yes, and here on the page I want to see here, say here manage assistant. Let's go to manage assistant page. Alright, so we are good. Now next to the delete button I want to put an edit assistant button. Inside the buttons I'm gonna say button dot tsx rfc, and this button is gonna redirect us to a page similar to the create assistant page, but here we're gonna have the fields completed with the assistant details, and then you will edit property and you're gonna hit the save button. So for that, here I'm gonna say button, delete assistant button. I want to be similar to the delete assistant button. Alright, edit. Instead of red, I want to be blue, and instead of button, I want to be a link. Let's import the link. Let's put an href. Sorry, import the link from Next.js, and here I'm gonna put for now just slash. Now I'm gonna take our assistant button and inside our manage assistant page, next to the delete button, I'm gonna put the edit assistant button. Now let's group all of those buttons. Let's make this div flex. And the space X of 4. When we're gonna click on the edit, we're gonna go to the slash manage assistant slash edit slash the assistant ID. So we need to pass here the assistant ID, assistant ID equals to the assistant dot ID. We need to do the same with the delete button. Alright, and we're gonna go to the, let's put here some JavaScript slash edit assistant ID. Alright, don't forget to put here in front assistant assistant is not defined. I think I misspelled this word. I put 3 S's. And now if I'm going to the edit, you can see here that I've got an 404 page. And now here inside our app router in the manage assistant, we need to create another page. Let's say edit page. And inside this edit page, we need to create another page. Let's say square brackets ID. Alright, and right here inside the assistant ID, I'm gonna create the page .tsx rfc. Let's name this page edit assistant page. Alright, and now you can see here that I've got the page. So for that, we're gonna copy the entire content of create assistant because we're gonna have the same thing. Let's go to create assistant page, copy the entire style, Now I'm going to our assistant page, edit assistant page. Let's import the inputs, and here instead of create assistant submit button, I'm gonna put an edit assistant submit button, and I'm gonna create this button here inside my components buttons. I'm gonna put the edit assistant submit button.tsx rfce. Alright, I'm gonna come back later to this button. Now let's see here, manage assistant, edit. Let's import our edit assistant submit button. Now you can see here that we've got our form to edit the assistant. And now here I want to show the assistant name that we want to edit. Here instead of create assistant, I'm gonna say edit assistant, and here I'm gonna place the name of the assistant, and for that we need to get the assistant. Let's come here and say const assistant equals to fetch assistant by ID, and we need to create this function. Don't forget to put await, and here make this function async. Let's go back to fetchers and create a separate function that fetch only one assistant using its ID. Export const function name. This function is gonna take an ID, let's say assistant ID, that is gonna be a string. And now going back to the documentation, retrieve assistant function. Let's put here the code. Here we need to put the assistant ID. Alright, and then we need to return the assistant. Now here I need to import this function that I've created, and here I need to put the ID. But to get the ID here, we need to take this ID that we pass in the URL. Now if I'm going here and I'm gonna log the params, you can see here that it's an object with the assistant ID of this ID. And now here I can put params.assistant ID, and I can get back my assistant. Let's say here my assistant for edit, it is gonna be this assistant. Let's refresh the page again. My assistant for edit is gonna be this assistant. Right, so we got the assistant here. Let's put here the assistant name, const name equals to assistant. Now let's put this name here. edit assistant candy assistant. Alright. Now here inside the text input we need to give an initial value that is gonna be the name field. Let's say initial value equals to, let's put here the name, but we need to go to the text input and here let's add a new value, initial value, that is gonna be a type of string. And now this input by default, let's say that this property can be optional, and for that I'm gonna put an, and then inside the input I'm gonna put the value of this initial value. And if this value doesn't exist, I'm gonna put here an empty string. So if I'm going to create assistant, you can see here we don't have any problem. But here on manage and edit, you can see here that now we have the assistant name. And here I forgot to mention, instead of value here we need to put a default value for this to be editable. Now if I'm going back here, I can edit the assistant name. If I'm going to refresh it, here you can see that I have the name of the assistant. And now I'm going to do the same with the other properties. Coming back here, let's take the initial value, name or empty string. Now we don't have the problem. Let's put here as well, but instead of name here I'm gonna put the instructions that I will get from this assistant and the description as well. Here I'm gonna take the description. We need to also add the initial value for text area input, just like the text input. Let's put here the initial value and the type of initial value, that is gonna be an optional value that is of type string. Here I'm going to take the default value, put here back inside the text area. Alright, you can see here that I've got the values and I also can edit them. Alright, so for the last ones, the checkboxes, here inside our checkbox input, we need to assign, to give here the default tools. Alright, that is gonna be an empty array by default, and we're gonna give here the type of an object with a string, an array of objects. Alright, and here we assign an empty array, but if we give this property, we're gonna have our default tools. Now here, before we create our use state, we're gonna put this handy function that is gonna loop through the default tools and is gonna map it and is gonna search if the default tool type equals to the tool ID. Now I'm gonna take those default tools and I'm gonna put here inside our state. And now the only thing that we have to do is to create the property default tools and put here the assistant.tools. Let's destructure the tools. Alright, and now I'm gonna put here the tools. Alright, and now I need to come back here when it's the checked property and I need to uncomment this one. And now you can see if I uncheck those boxes and I'm gonna refresh, you can see that our assistant have those properties checked. Now I need to go back to this page, open my edit assistant button, and now let's implement the functionality to save the changes. Put here the button, and this will be very similar to the create assistant submit button. Here you can see that it's just a button with the type submit, and I want to do the same. Let's put here this button, import this. Here let's put save. And now here I want to put the action. Let's say edit assistant action. Alright, let's create this action. Here on the actions, export const edit assistant action async function. Now let's put here those one, initial state and form data. Let's say return. And to edit this assistant, let's go back to the documentation. On modify assistant, the only thing that we need is the assistant ID and the everything that we want to change here. So for that, just like in the create assistant, I'm gonna copy here the name, the description, the instruction, and the selected checkboxes. Now until here. Now I want to copy this code and put here. Here I need to give the assistant ID. So here we need to pass as well the assistant ID. ID equals to the ID a string. And for that, here I need to put as well an hidden input of type hidden, that is gonna have the name equals to the assistant ID and value equals to params.assistant ID. Alright, so we're gonna have the assistant ID as well. Now inside the edit assistant page, I want to do the same like create assistant page, and for that here I need to show on toast when the edit is successful. Let's copy this code and going back here, I need to put here the use form state. But use form state and use effect, those are hooks, and hooks works only in a client component. But here you can see that the page is an async function. That means that it needs to be a server component. And to solve that, we need to break our form into a separate client component, and only inside this page is gonna be the server component logic functionality. Now inside the components, Let's create a new folder called forms. Okay, and inside this forms folder I'm gonna say here the edit assistant form .tsx. Now I'm gonna take my form. Let's copy this form, put here inside the new created form that is gonna be a client component. Let's put here use client. Now here I am free to use the hooks. Let's take all of those hooks from here. Let's paste those here. Let's import the hooks, the use form state and the use effect. Let's import the push. You can do that by const push equals to use router. That is gonna be the router from next navigation. And now I'm gonna put my action inside this hook. Let's import the action. Let's create an initial state. That is gonna be of type message of an empty string. And now let's put our form action here inside the action. Let's import again the text input, the text area input and the checkbox input, as well as the edit assistant submit button. Now inside this form I want to pass the assistant ID, the name, the instruction, the description and the tools. Instruction and the tools. Now we need to give the types here. Let's copy again all of this. Let's say assistant ID is gonna be a string. The name is gonna be as well as string. Description string. Instruction string as well. And the tools is gonna be an array of objects of type. Now let's go back to our page, and here we just need to put our new created form with the arguments assistant ID equals to the params that assistant ID the name is gonna be the name, the description is gonna be the description, the instructions is gonna be the instructions. So now you can see here that we have a TypeScript error because name needs to be defined. So here we're gonna say that if the name doesn't exist, we're gonna put an empty string. Let's do the same for every property. And now let's go to our actions. Let's comment this logic for now. And now I'm gonna say console.log. Now I'm gonna put everything that I have here, the assistant ID, the name. Let's log all of this. Let's say here test args. Now if I go back here, I want here for the instruction to be it works. And if I'm gonna click on save button, test args, here you can see that we have the new edited field that is it works. Alright, and we need to come here with all of the edited fields, and let's update our assistant. Here we're gonna put the assistant ID. Alright, for the instructions we're gonna put the instructions. We can do just like this. For the name as well, for the tools as well. Model is gonna be let's say it's gonna be GPT 3.5 Turbo by default. Files, I don't want files. Let's put here a description as well. Now if I'm going to put the name, let's say edited assistant, and click save. Let's check our console, and I think it seems that assistant have changed. If I'm going to refresh this assistant, here you can see that I have the name edited for this assistant. Now the only thing that I want to do is to show the toast if the edited is successfully, and for that if the return message is assistant created. So here if the message is assistant edited successfully, if this message exists inside my form, if this message exists, I want to show this toast assistant and hit save. Now you can see that I am back to my chat AI app, and I have here the toast with the success message. Let's go to manage assistant, and you can see here I have the dog assistant. Alright, and that means that we have covered the edit functionality.